overall sentiments are almost back to normal. And of course, the government gave its economic stimulus totaling roughly 500 billion US dollars in some, and there have been other entities too, basically chipping in terms of stimulus. But overall, the sentiments have been very good. And now when you look around, look at the petrol consumption across the country is more or less back to normal, which is a very big indicator in an economy like ours. And diesel consumption, more or less back to normal. Electricity, uh, fully back to normal. Look at air traffic, it's almost 70% back to normal. Look at traffic jams, Delhi, Bombay, Calcutta, Bangalore, they're known for, nasty traffic jams, and traffic jams are back, which means that, economic life is more or less back to normal. Let's not forget one thing, which is quite different those who are familiar with India, that culturally, Indians like to move on. They don't like to hold on to tough thoughts or negative thoughts for too long. That's not the Indian way of looking at life, whether it's social life, cultural life, or economic life. So the result is, yes, coronavirus is still there and is still playing tough. But at the same time, when it comes to the economic life, people have adopted it, and people have said, all right, we are going to deal with it, at the same time move on. So overall sentiments in the country, in India, when you talk with the ordinary people, talk with businessmen, talk with economic players and other actors, it's more or less back to normal. And as he said, the result is that what it is there. And you look at for instance, the foreign investor sentiments, and when you look at FDI equity, is unprecedented, record breaking in a way. Overall, so far been, I'm talking FDI equity is like 500 billion US dollars overall so far. Look at FDI. India is an FDI destination, among the hottest FDI destination in the world. Look at India's hard currency reserves. Spite all this, the tough months and tough period and all that, actually hard currency reserves are just going up and up. And at the same time, when it comes to vaccination, which is of course kind of given a new dawn, a new hope to the economy as a whole. Vaccination, the campaign is starting in 3 days from now, on the 16th. And India has an advantage because India is a major supplier of, coronavirus vaccination to the whole world. So we are a major producer, which means that in a record time, we are going to a large number of people, maybe 300 million people vaccinated in the coming few months. And that's going to change the landscape, economic landscape, dramatically. And things will, as I said, almost back to normal, are going to look like back to normal. And at the same time, when you look at the government focus, just a few bullet points here, the government basically focus is to push demand. We have faced some challenges in terms of demand, especially when it comes to demand from the rural areas. So government's focus is now to basically push demand. So there's more demand, for various things, both in urban areas and also in the rural areas. And results are there for everybody to see. I just talked about fuel, demand for fuel, for instance. The same goes for the second thing, major area government is, focusing on is credit offtake. Credit offtake. So banks are being encouraged to lend more and make it easy. At the same time, government is encouraging, especially manufacturing sector, services sector, and MSMEs, the small and medium-sized enterprises, to borrow and to make it easy for them to borrow money, so that they get into the full economic normalcy as soon as possible. And at the same time, there is a huge push from the government, both the federal government, the central government, as we call it, and the state governments, to invest in infrastructure. So wherever you go in the country today, you see, for instance, the big tall cranes and manufacturing happening, at the same time infrastructure happening everywhere, whether it's roads or airports or ports and power plants and the factories and schools and hospitals and all that. So the result is that wherever you go, when you look around, you find things are almost back to normal. And look at the workforce at the same time. Like workforce, over 80% workforce when it comes to manufacturing is back to normal, because we are a vast country. A lot of people moved back into their villages in the first 3-4 months. They are almost 80 to 82% are back. When it comes to the workforce in in the rural area, that's almost, coming, employed by agriculture sector, coming back to almost normal. And at the same time, government is pushing for retooling and, organizing training as fast as possible for those who basically need to be retooled in order to meet the challenges thrown up by coronavirus. So overall, I mean, I'm a party spokesperson, so you might think that I'm just talking of the positive. No, I'm talking of all the challenges involved, challenges for any emerging economy, especially if you happen to be an economy like India with 1.30 billion people and still significant number of people below energy poverty line, significant number of people below energy poverty line overall, and at the same time, other challenges. But as I said, that the response of the government, both the central and the state governments, have been swift, and overall the cultural factor, where Indians don't like to hold on to negative things, hold on to tough times. They really know how to find their way forward. Indians are very good, culturally very good, looking at dawn everywhere, even at midnight. So that has actually that has helped tremendously the way Indians look at challenges. Now, very briefly, since this lecture is hosted by Gulf Intelligence based in Dubai, that I must talk about the Middle East, and especially the relationship that India has always enjoyed with the Middle Eastern countries, the Gulf countries in particular. And first thing is that, India, when you look at the large economy of the world, including China, United States, European Union, we know the Middle East or the Gulf countries better than any other geography in the world. I mean, we have enjoyed civilizational relationship with the Gulf countries, with the Middle East countries for very, very long time, for centuries, for millenniums, in fact. And that gives us tremendous edge and an advantage when we deal with the Gulf countries. And we, at the same time, roughly 2/3 of our crude oil is imported from there. And 80% of natural gas is also coming from the Gulf countries. And when you look at the number of Indians living there, it's like close to, living and working in the Gulf countries is almost close to 8 to 9 million. And at the same time, the relationship between India and the Middle East country, economic I'm talking about, is very, very deep. But what we have done, a few more points, is that, to deepening this relationship further, and especially the focus has been on the UAE and Saudi Arabia. So the result is that today we enjoy a strategic relationship, India and the United Arab Emirates, and India and Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. When I say strategic, it covers everything. We are looking at the world 20 years from now, 30 years from now, strategically. That includes defense, that includes cooperation and security, that includes cooperation in economic security. We have got a full roadmap with milestones and working in that direction. That has brought India, India and the Gulf countries very, very close. And at the same time, as you can see that, most countries are, especially UAE and Saudi Arabia, are investing heavily in India. And at the same time, the three areas I quickly point out there where the focus is when it comes to India-Middle East relationship: security of Middle East and security, overall economic security of India and the Middle East region. That includes economic security. India and Gulf countries working together on terrorism, and India and Middle Eastern countries working together on energy security. Energy security, where demand for energy for India is secured, and when it comes to supply from, between India, the United Arab Emirates, and Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and other countries is secure. So energy security, another major area. And with this, I'd like to conclude, and I'm very happy to take questions if there are any.
Great, thank you, Narendra. Very interesting. Interesting to see that you're saying that you're painting a very rosy picture that India is almost back to normal in this COVID scenario at the moment. I'd definitely like to ask you a question in terms of economic stability. So India has prioritized economic stability over a national lockdown. How will this strategy pay off for the nation's balance sheets in 2021? Or how do you see it impact investors' confidence in the country, especially foreign investors?
Well, you see, coronavirus was a new creature. So first 2-3 months, like many other countries, we also struggled. And we basically imposed a very tough lockdown. That means giving orders to industry to shut down, airport to shut down, railway to shut down. But then slowly we realized that's not really the best way forward. and we started opening up the economy. We said on the one hand, we battle with coronavirus, at the same time, we open up the economy. So the journey was tough. And but at the same time, when you look at the results now, the results are very good. The challenge is still there on the table. The coronavirus is still around, though recovery rate has gone up. It's 96.5%, which means that coronavirus is there, but is not perceived as dangerous as many other geographies. So there is a bit of positivity around. At the same time, India being a major producer of vaccine, that has also given a tremendous hope to the people. But as I said, culturally, we don't like to hold on to darkness for too long. And that has played a significant role in terms of, changing the landscape. The result is that, new companies are being registered, new offices are being opened, and especially when it comes to foreign direct investment. Look at foreign FDI figures around the world. India is among the hottest destinations. The same goes for FDI equity. So I think it's more to do with the fact that here is a huge market, and at the same time, the country which looks at the situation, especially created by coronavirus, instead of going back to the caves, coming and fighting with it, and fighting with tremendous hope and light and brightness. So results are there for to see. When I say that, some of your viewers may not believe it, but all I say is that if that's the case, come and see it with your own eyes for yourself.
Sounds good. I'm coming back to your point about the Middle East. Obviously massive energy ties, but not only, as you said. But what should be, in your opinion, the top 3 priorities for India in 2021 when it comes to deepening trade ties with the Middle East, and how effective can new partnerships be in supporting the country's recovery?
Well, good question. I think, there are 2-3 points. I think, when you look at the overall economic relationship, when you look at the geography, India and the Middle East are very, very close. I mean, we have some issues with country like Pakistan. So there are a few issues, and some Middle Eastern countries have issues with Iran. So the result is that there are these areas where for instance, we have some issues. But I personally feel, and many of us in India feel, that we should be actually building even closer bridges, even physical bridges, in the sense that, highways between India and the Middle East. And eventually we should have in our mind by 2050 or 2045, we can have a common market between India and the Middle Eastern countries, because they are also a very important market for us, and India is a very important market for them. And we have also seen at the same time, like India, Middle Eastern country like UAE and Saudi Arabia have started adopting technology and looking at the world beyond hydrocarbons. So that works very well. In fact, though, that is another area where India and the Gulf countries have started now joining hands in terms of investment, in terms of building common roadmaps. But most important area, that is the economic security for the Gulf countries, economic security for India. How can we work together? And there's a lot of work going on economic security, and at the same time, overall security of the region. When you look at the Gulf region, it's very important for India. The Gulf as a security, in terms of security and defense, is a stable region. Any kind of, military or security disturbance or ripples, negative ripples in that region are very disturbing for us, because the region is too close to us. So India and Gulf countries are working very, very closely in order to make sure that to ensure security of the region, economic security, military security, overall security, and energy security. So starting with energy security, coming to economic security, and then down to overall security of the region and India. So I think tremendous work going on in that direction. And that is the reason, if you look at the relationship with India and Kuwait, India and Iraq, India and Kingdom Saudi Arabia, India and UAE, or Oman for that matter, or even Iran, never been closer than now. In fact, today we enjoy such close relationships that, whenever there are some differences, some issues, I mean, all that India and UAE or Saudi Arabia, they need to do is to sit across the table and they find a solution before actually even 1 hour is over. So such great understanding, which is now being expanded into economic sphere, in order to make sure that, whatever Middle Eastern countries can buy from India, they buy from us, or they come and invest in India. And we build a kind of economic interdependence, energy interdependence between India and, Kuwait, India and Saudi Arabia, India and UAE and India and Oman and other countries of the region.
Indeed, yes. You mentioned earlier about the rollout of the vaccine, which is about to start. How will that affect India's economic growth projections in 2021? Do you think it's enough to buoy consumer demand early on in the year, and therefore give the nation a better chance of a speedy recovery? given that you were saying it's pretty rosy at the moment, obviously then this will boost economic activity, but how will the diffusion be, given that the rural areas obviously are so large in India, and that's probably going to be a principal challenge?
Let me give you two figures. For instance, when the first quarter, after coronavirus, our GDP contracted heavily, more than 23%. Look at, for instance, the rate today overall is down to 7%. And you look at, for instance, projections, not by our agencies, by IMF, by international agencies, that by next financial year, India is actually back to 6 to 8% growth rate. Some agencies are saying 8%, some are saying 6%, but we are pretty confident that we will come back and re-emerge as the hottest and the fastest growing economy in the world within next coming 12 months. So by end of 2020, by next Christmas, that is end of this year, I mean, India will be back as among the hottest economic destination, and also among the fastest growing economies in the world. And that's mainly the stimulus and the initiative the government has taken, and at the same time, as I said, the economic fundamentals of Indian economy are intact, structures are intact, enthusiasm is intact, ambition to be a fast growing economy is intact, and India's march towards the destination that by next coming 25 years, we want to be $15 to $20 trillion economy intact. By 2025, that we want to be $5 trillion economy, that ambition, that killer instinct is intact. So look around everything is intact. And ambition is very much there. We want to be the second largest economy in the world in the coming 25 years. We want to be a $12 trillion economy as soon as possible. $5 trillion economy over the next 4 years. So those ambitions are there, roadmaps are there, and the country is on the move. So that's how it works. Once you know your destination and you have the required killer instinct, and at the same time you have the required size, and the fundamentals are intact and strong, I think you get there. And we are moving in that direction very, very fast.
Okay, interesting. Coming back to private investment that you were saying it's a strong market for FDI, but it was slightly declining before the COVID-19 pandemic. This sector now, of course, the private investment sector is even more important as the country tries to regain its economic footing. So what do you believe are the three incentives, or the top three incentives that the government can use to bolster investors' appetite and confidence in 2021?
Well, and a good question. You see, first is that, to make life easy for investors in terms of, government is reforming wherever it is necessary, building infrastructure so that things and goods can move fast. And at the same time, the overall legal process is being further smoothened so that if there are any issues, they don't really face the kind of challenges that they might face in some other economies. And at the same time, if they want to exit, to make it very easy for them to exit, if they choose to do so for whatever reasons. So I think overall, and at the same time, when it comes to taking the government approvals to come in and invest, more or less those things are gone. So which means that, majority of sectors are on automatic route. They don't need to go to the government at all. All that they do is to take a decision, come and set up an office and get into business. And so that is precisely the reason that even before coronavirus, pandemic, there was FDI has not slowed down. Foreign direct investment has been coming rapidly. And when it comes to FDI equity, there you see up and down all the time, because that money moves with the computer. And but when it comes to FDI hard, that's been very, very steady. And even in equity, it has been more or less very, very steady. So because you see, when you look around the world, I mean, where else you'll find a market as stable as India, economy as stable as India, economic regime, the government regulation, the legal system, the courts, and the banking system as Western as anywhere else in the world, and very modern at the same time. And where for instance, is rule of law. It's not like some other country which are authoritarian, where you don't know what's happening behind the wall. In India, everything is transparent. It's a democracy, very vibrant democracy. Whether you are a foreign investor, you're an Indian investor, if you have any issue, you go to the same court. And the court looks at the case. They don't look at your origin of your passport or color of your skin or no such thing. So that's the advantage. So it's a democracy. I think the biggest advantage that we have compared with the other economies, especially in the Asian region, that we are a democracy. And when people come and work here, they find us that we are more or less like any other Western democracy when it comes to, legal system, when it comes to the banking system, when it comes to ethos, when it comes to the value system and working ethics and so on and so forth. And I think that's a tremendous advantage that India enjoy over other economies.
Absolutely. Excellent. Well, listen, Narendra, I'm afraid that's all we have time for. I'd like to thank you very much for your interesting insights and for the attendees joining us across the globe. And please stay with us. We look forward to seeing you shortly in the plenary session of the forum. And once again, Narendra, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks, Anna.
Bye-bye.